Trent University in set design, which is, so I had a great balance. So I still work in the industry and I still lecture in the industry. We're going live on YouTube. So that is now. So that's just come up. So I'm just going to repeat what I say. So I'm Duncan Howell. I'm a production designer. I've been an art director. I've gone through the whole process in the art department. And yeah, I'm on the committee of the British Film Designers Guild. So before we start this forum, I just want to tell you a little bit about the British Film Designers Guild. It's a flourishing, growing professional group of talented individuals who have over 550 credited memberships of skilled creatives and production designers, spanning the various branches of the art department and in film and television and commercials. It was formed with the aim of raising the standards and the profile of art. It formed with the aim of raising the standards and the profile of art department and protecting the interests of its members over 75 years ago. So these core principles still apply today, and we're a thriving, evolving, creative community. And hence these forums are here for this. It's keeping the standards very high in a very kind of fantastic, it's a fantastic industry. So basically, one of the elements that's come from questions is about risk assessments. It's come through from questions into the British Film Designers Guild. So we decided that I'd just go kind of like an overview of what risk assessments are and speak about this and kind of go through it, because it's important to know that risk assessments aren't there to stop the creativity. It's the reverse, that they're put in place so that we can be creative. So what I'm going to do is I share my screen, and then I can go through and explain it a little bit more. So bear with me. Okay, hopefully that should highlight. Okay, right. I'm hoping that you can see this screen. So health and safety in production design. So here's a little taster of the start of it. So this is actually not from filming footage. This is just from an iPhone camera, but this is just a little taster to start the session. So there you go. That's introducing. So this is the type of stuff that production designers, art directors get involved with. We read scripts. We then, challenge things to create things so that the script can work, and we put things in place to make things like that happen. And all that has a lot of risk assessments involved with a stunt like that. So I'm just. Here's Harrison Ford. You may or may not know, a while ago on one of the productions, there was an accident that it was a case. It went to trial, and I can show you just after this. I'll explain, what happened. So what I'm going to talk about is risk assessment. Responsibility. Who's responsible? Hazards, the risks, and the control measures. The control measures is very important to so that we can allow these stunts to happen, stunts and special effects to happen. So yeah, so Harrison Ford was in an incident, and it was in 2014. He was knocked to the ground and he was crushed beneath a heavy door. So basically the outcome was the health and safety executive said that the power of the rapidly closing door meant Ford was hit with a force comparable with the weight of a small car. Now, it was very interesting here. It's the greatest failing of all was the fact is communication, lack of communication. So yes, we can all write risk assessments. That's fine. We can have a whole load of them and put them in the production office. But there's no point in having them written if they're not shared and communicated. So that's just really one of the things that is very important out of this forum to know, is that you'll see the forms that you have to do, and it's not just good enough just to write them and then hand them to the production office. So what is a risk assessment? The risk assessment in examination, just going to turn this off. Examination of what could cause harm on a particular shoot or a specific location. So the production and the production and producer can decide whether it's an adequate measures have been put in place to prevent harm. So the responsibility, yes, producer's ultimately responsible, but obviously we're talking about art department, so therefore, you know, the designer is also responsible for the elements that are linked to design, which is a huge amount of responsibility, because sets are a massive part of the production. So that's where the designer is the head of the department, so therefore has to be involved with seeing the other risk assessments, understanding what's required, and again, it's down to communication. So a hazard. So basically, the risk assessment is all about is a hazard. So a hazard is anything with potential to cause harm. You know, it's touching a hot kettle and getting a burn. You know, it's so typical hazards. You've got physical hazards, electricity, noise, fire, trailing cables, chemical hazards, substances used at work, paints and oils, biological, and then hazardous activities, working at height, lifting heavy or awkward loads. So those are hazards. I'm hoping I'm not kind of just explaining simple things, but it's important to understand that you have to see what the hazards are, so that risk assessment forms can be filled in correctly. So here's a typical hazard. You know, it was filming by water, and a set was being built, and all the recces that were done were in beautiful weather, calm seas, and so you don't think, oh God, it could be really, really treacherous here. So I'm just going to play this video of what it was like when we turned up one morning. Oops, bear with me, sorry. Is that paused? Play that again. So yeah, wind and set don't go well together. You've got, you know, scenery, especially with construction going on. You have to remember, as set designers and, you know, art directors, we're not there just for the actual filming day. There's the preparation beforehand where accidents can happen, and then there's the D-rigs afterwards where accidents can happen. So it's important to understand that these risk assessments are for the whole process. And there's an example of, yeah, again, wet weather gear. That's an element of protecting yourself against these weathers, but also winds can pick up. So when you've got scenery in place, then there's an important element to obviously weight it down, and these discussions you have with construction, so that when it's constructed, you can have the discussion with the construction manager to say, how will we weight it? What will we do? Because the construction manager has a huge responsibility of risk assessments as well. So it's not just down to the designer. Other departments have their own, risk assessments that they have to sort out. So these are typical hazards, a list for a studio set. So access, egress, overhead hazards, electrical hazards, fire hazards, housekeeping. I've got a slide on housekeeping to show you what that means. Manual handling, film equipment, working at height, set construction, children and young persons or other persons on site, visitors especially, who aren't used to necessarily what a film studio is about and probably are so in awe of what they're seeing, they're not necessarily looking where they're going. So these things, again, are hazards. Stunt work, very big hazards. Special effects, very big hazards. Weapons on set and chemicals, very big hazards. So risk. What's the risk? Well, the risk is the term used to describe the likelihood of harm being caused by the hazard. So taking into account the severity of the harm. So High severity is obviously death and major injury. Medium, injuries, illness causing short-term disability. Low are all other injuries or illnesses. So the degree of risk increases as the severity of harm increases. I've got a little kind of legend later to show you the kind of the matrix of this. So if you're standing on the very, very edge of a high building and you're teetering on the edge, and the risk, the severity of harm, if you fall off and you're 20 stories up, obviously the risk is death. So, and the severity of harm. So that's, and the likelihood, if you're standing on the edge, it's very likely that you could fall off. So that's just a little example. This was a shameless production I did where we had to bury an actor in the soil for a certain, it was scripted, so therefore it has to be done. So yes, you can dig a big hole, but there's risks involved with this. The hazards are the fact that the ground can cave in, which is very probable. It's happened with when graves are dug, that you have to shutter the sides so that it doesn't fall in on the person. So this is a great big box, an empty box, that we have then a timber with a cutout so that slots around the head, and then dressed soil around. But the box that the actor's in effectively cannot, the ground can't fall in around the actor. So there's ways of, the risk assessments are there to try and, so you put these in place so that this can happen. The control measures, I'll get onto control measures in a bit. So this is the matrix that is, so this will be recorded. You can see this on YouTube. So basically the matrix shows the severity against the likelihood. So threes, obviously, we need to get there. We need to get everything down to low. That's the ultimate. That's what we have to do. So whatever you have to put in place beforehand, when you're looking at the risk and that you're doing the risk assessment beforehand, that the hazards, everything could be very, very high, and the risks are high. But when the control measures go in place, everything goes to low. So this is control measures. So these are the measures that are put into place to reduce the risk, some of which have to be carried out in compliance with health and safety regulations. This is the government body, and there's guidance on this. But also, what does the risk assessment look like? It's a simple one. You say for evaluating a single hazard, like you're using a tower or scaffold camera platform, can be on a single sheet of paper. So you don't, it's not massive, huge documents to go through. And further on from this, there's some examples of risk assessments, and they're kind of simple, that you tick the box and you show the control measures that you're going to use. And as I say, it might be, if some sets might not require any at all, and if that's the case, you can hand a risk assessment in with like, no, there is no risks here. Housekeeping. This is an example of, so if you've got visitors and guests walking around and they're wowed by what, being on a film studio for the first time, with all the trip hazards, falling into cables, there's a lot of risk and hazards there. The risk of it happening, and the hazards are all evident to see with this. So control measures to put in place for simple things like cables would be basically, move to this, running lines over cables, taping cables to the ground. You see the cones there marking the edges. So those are the control measures so that a trip hazard effectively doesn't happen. So you would write these down. I mean, this would be, production would probably do this, or locations would do their own risk assessments to say that this is what we'll do to prevent the public from tripping over. Glass on set. There you go. When it goes in, it's clear, very clear, it hasn't been dirtied down. People may have seen an empty window the day before the glass has gone in, and just not think about it. So simple control measure to stop any severity of harm, of cutting and hurting oneself, is just put some stickers on, just show it's glass by the most simplest of things. And therefore, the control measures in the risk assessment would be where there's glass on set, clearly mark it so that it's visible to the human eye. And that's a simple control measure. It doesn't have to be fancy words. It's just a simple control measure, just written down. So on a drama where we were filming, it was scripted that we were by a canal. This was in Manchester. We had to film by a canal. There was an actor involved, and there was a baby involved, and they go into the water. And so canals, by their own, what they are, they're dirty places. So the rats could be in there. There could be stuff underwater that can't be seen. All these are hazards. Dangers under the water is a hazard. Drowning is a hazard. Falling in and hurting yourself, that's a hazard. And the risks of when you're there in a real real canal, they're evident. So control measures. So this is where, as a set designer, you've got the power to say, right, I can get rid of these hazards and lower the risk I'll build it as a set. So that's how the creativity, and that's what the responsibilities you have is like, yeah, no, that's fine. We'll build these. We'll build this to create what you want, but it will be safe. So, and that's what we have to continually keep thinking about when you're reading these scripts, and offer solutions. So again, this is just there's different types of forms. So clearly you can see here on this type of form, falling from height, who's at risk, the camera operator, controls in red. That's what scaffold erected by a competent contractor. Don't go to someone who's not used to the filming industry, or competent contractors are very, very important. Your construction manager, your construction team will be competent crew, props, competent crew, stagehands, competent crew, people who've done courses on lifting. These control measures are in place so that the severity of injury, if the controls aren't in place, is very high. With the controls in place, it's very low. And this is what it's all about. That's again a generic blank form. You can create these on an Excel or Word document or whatever it is. You can create these to, there's different types. You could go online and get them downloaded. So basically, just so that you can fill them in, and you can add more boxes. If you need more boxes, then add them in. But it's important to just make sure every set that you're doing, every location that you go to, you write it in and you put in the risk. Try not to leave it to the last minute or the day before you're filming, or you start preset. Try not to do that. It's important to get these underway and again communicate them. This is Bickers, who do all the big vehicle stunts. This is one of their risk assessments. I'm sure they wouldn't mind me sharing this, which I'm doing. So obviously what you see here is the hazards, the stunt, to whom the stunt engineers here we can see. And, the severity and the likelihood, it is high. And what we want, that's just far, far too high. So from this point onwards, this is the bit of the control method. So basically all that control method is what Bickers say they will do. And then after the residual risk, effectively after the control measures are in place, it all goes to 1. And you can see on the right hand side, it's going to 1. And this is what is the important thing that we have to do. Set construction. Just this, rather than read it all again. Injury from accidents with power tools, hand tools, falls from ladders. There are hazards and all around the workshops. So that's important for the construction manager to have to run the construction workshop in a safe way. There's noise, so there when power tools, you have ear defenders. All these are important elements. to just control measures to stop this from happening. I will be getting to some other videos soon, just rather than just show you a load of forms. As special effects companies, but again, their risk assessment isn't in a form; it's in just a written paper, written document. So that they explain the materials they've used, the methods that they're using, the control precautions. So safe distancing, for example, precautions. They would speak to the first to say, you know, this is a special effect, therefore, no, we are in charge of this area. No one can just walk up to it thinking it's safe, because it won't be. There'll be, if cannons are purged to, you know, ready to fire, then, or, you know, bomb releases ready to drop bridges and things. It's live. It's called live. The set's live, and therefore the first who also looks after the health and safety directly on set will work with the special effects. But it's important that the designer and the art department read the risk assessments. There might be requirements from special effects or from you know, the vehicle companies and stunt teams. There might be requirements that they've put in that they've maybe have mentioned on a recce, but there's requirements they will have put in saying, please supply crash mats or something like that. So you need to look at the risk assessments, their risk assessments, so that when you turn up on set, the production can carry on, so that you're not then liable. So this is the checklist. It's quite a good one to have, really, for production design and for production. So just to have a look through that and to see, right, okay, yeah, that applies to this set, that applies to this set, and then that's a really good checklist to look at. Again, there are unforeseens. This was we had a huge gale on a production I did, and it tore away. I mean, all the scaffold and the sets were properly weighted down with huge, you know, tonnage of weight fixed into walls. But even the highest gales came in, and this was an accident. This didn't hurt anybody. It was over a weekend, but it was an accident. There was no one's fault to lie here. So accidents can still happen. But the importance is you've got to put everything in place to try and prevent it. So, you know, when we refixed all this, we even put more weight and more fixings in, and we stopped any areas of so where wind could get behind things. So, but it goes to show, you know, these elements can, and lucky no one got hurt with this. This again is another stunt and special effects. So stunts and special effects working together. Obviously, the art department has an involvement with the set that these are performed on. So it's three kind of departments working closely together. So clearly there are the hazards, the burns, falls. You know, the stunt person was taken back on wires, pulled back on cue. So obviously fire is a thing. So the stunt person was gelled up. Control measures. Also the requirement from both stunts, from stunts and through with special effects, was that to prevent harm, the door was the barrier to stop effectively all the explosion, the fire hitting the stunt person. But also that door had to be a soft door, because you can't have a solid. That's just as bad to have a solid door flying into the stunt person. So we made a very kind of fireproof soft door that looked just, you know, right. And again, controls put in place, so everyone walked out fine. It looked dramatic, it looked like the person had hurt themselves, but it was absolutely spotless. It was fine. So no film production is immune to safety issues. Even careful preparation won't always stop things from happening. I showed that with the wind on one of the sets. But having worked through a risk assessment in advance can be the difference between a sprained knee and something far more serious. So you remember these basic steps: identify the hazards and those affected by them, evaluate the risk of each of those hazards, identify and prioritize appropriate control measures to eliminate or reduce the risk. We want really to eliminate it, but when we say reduce it, we really do need to drop it right down to the baseline. Now, this is a sequence that shows, this was done on a drama called The Royal many years ago, and it's just, I'm going to show the whole clip here because there's lots of different elements of special effects because we're involved with the vehicle, underwater, and set design. So here, let me just play this clip for a moment. If I can just find play.
Hi! Can you stop, please? I've a patient back here! There. That's a bit better, eh, Alf? Come on, let's get you out of here. Oh my God!
I need your help, mate. No problem.
I'm gonna have to get you to stand up. It's gonna really hurt. Oh, sorry, but you've got to stand up. That's it. Stand up. That's it. Hey! What's happening? What's happening?
It goes without saying that the hazard here is clearly drowning. The risk of it happening being very high. Through an ambulance into the sea and the cameraman in the back, and the person in the back, they don't watch the actor. Most likely no control measures. So just moving forward. Yeah, so that obviously risks a bit, the vehicle going off into the water. Obviously, no stunt person was in that. It's too powerful. The cannons that send it off, I think it does something like 0 to 60 in a meter or something very scary. So no one could be in that. So this was just an empty shell rigged so that it could be fired into the sea. So Bickers took control of that whole thing, and they were all over the risk assessment of that. Here is so we had different versions. So we have we had a underwater shot looking up at the ambulance coming down. The hazard, because it was in the script, so we couldn't, even if we knew where the ambulance was going to land in the sea, we couldn't have had a camera person underwater with a camera because it would have been far too dangerous to film that. So therefore, there are sequences that we, and you also, so this is where miniatures come along. So that the control measure there was we will make a miniature and we'll put the miniature in for the shot underwater looking up for the vehicle coming down. There's another control measure. There it is again. And so yeah, filming the kind of the sequence, the panic in the ambulance. So with the set created, the control measure was we build it, film it in a water tank. It's open-sided so that the cameras can be within the acting elements, and the actors are comfortable that they can be submerged underwater with no risk of drowning at all. So again, control measures added in place. So this is what I'm saying is that this is the great thing about production design, in the creativity, the thought process, that you have to come with solutions and be around the table and say, right, yeah, we can make this work. What we'll do, we'll have the real thing here, we'll have the miniature there, and we'll have a tank build here, you know, and we'll all be guided in, and it's discussion, it's communication, and the creativity is allowed to flow. So again, rigs put in place, ready for the action of the underwater sequences. So it's great fun, and when it works, it's brilliant. When it works, and it will work, because you've planned it, you've talked it through, and all the departments become involved, so that obviously, you know, you can't have lighting, has to be waterproof lighting, and all these elements. These all factor in to make the production work. So again, there's the camera person with the camera in the water with the actors, and as I say, no one can get trapped, and everyone can, you know, come out on that platform. Now, this is an interesting one to show just little things like prop things that are made. So this was again a stunt, but with props. So the control measures to stop a hazard and the risk would be, as you can see, there's a whole load of stones made, softs they're called. So soft are again an element of risk assessment, or a control measure to think about. So this is just, let me just play this sequence. So there we go. So again, these are the soft, so that they are sponge bricks, and they worked, and they're also the kind of Belfast sink that you can just see planted up there, that's polystyrene. So there was no way, the control measures were there, so there was no way the stunt person could ever hurt themselves, because they just fall onto softs. You couldn't have those real. So these are again the prop element side of what we have to do for control measures. Again, working at height. So going up to the parapet of an edge of a huge drop. Therefore, what you would do, you can have a stunt person go to the edge, wired back. They would be, that you can see the person holding the wire. That's controlled, so that they can't fall off. So you can go really close to the edge with these elements with controls in place. But then when you want to do the actor falling off, you build the set away from the edge, but we're still with the height. Onto crash mats. And then again, in sequence, elements are made so that the stunt person can then be wired for the descent. And again, a rigging company comes in, and their risk assessments are for these sequences. So what you can see is that you're building up a picture that there's a lot of elements that happen, but a lot of people have a lot of risk assessments to do. Fire. This is one that you can't set fire to a set and have a flammable set. So you have to effectively build a set that you can't set light to. So there's certain materials that you would use that you can get painted up to look like timber, but I can't remember the name of them now. But yeah, construction. So construction would have that specific requirement to say you do the drawing of the set, and you would make, you know, a note on the drawing to say all materials fireproofed. This is for an effects stunt, blah blah blah, and discuss it with construction to say how you'll do it and what you'll use, so that the communication is there. They are aware of what they're doing. So this is, don't just presume someone would know this. So therefore, the fire bars or whatever's treated can be turned on and turned off. This is an example of just to show how a fire bar would work. Oops.
Just a full bottle open again, mate, and just wang it up on the lever here. Yeah, ready? Oh, amazing. Fantastic.
And then
Cool.
it just turns off. So that's how a fire is. So the control measures are there. Special effects are brought in to do fire, which it's not something that you would ever give to the prop team or the art department. So a department comes in, they have their own risk assessments which they adhere to, and they bring in the gas. They're called slinkies, the lines that run along that push the gas through. And as you can see there's a pilot light, which is just a piece of just a bit of lighter fire lighter, which just keeps a light so no one goes near the source, and then that just ignites the gas. And then and the after effect is create a set that looks like it's been burnt, but it's all set. That's not a burnt set at all. It's all been painted, sprayed, twisted. Some elements were burnt separately and then put out and then brought in for dressing. So useful links, I've added this, which you could see. There's lots of different useful links. Obviously, we are, again, this is the standards that we, the British Film Designers Guild, are, very much making sure that our standards in production and filming are high. We've got responsibilities to others and yourselves. So that's really that's really the talk. And so I'm just going to say also more information about the British Film Designers Guild. I am going to come off this. More information about the British Film Designers Guild, including the benefits individual, you can find at britishfilmdesignersguild.com. So I'm just going to stop sharing and see if there's any questions. If there's any question, let me just open the chat up. Let's have a look. Questions. Yeah, I'm free. If you want to actually just come, I don't know if you come on live with a question or just write questions in. At what point in the design process do you risk assessment? For example, this ambulance shot. When do you look at your risks and make the decisions on how the shoot is to minimize the risks? So you before any kind of construction starts. So these, the actual form would be done nearer to production, showing the control risks that you're putting in place. So you'd never have anything happen without a control element, so you can do multiple risk assessments, but you would do a preset element, the rigging risk assessment. So you can do that early on, and you can include then the filming element too, or you could just have separate ones. So it's tricky. Your communication recce's would be post recce, I would say. Discussions around a table about how you can do things, your thoughts on how you reduce the risks can be just verbal chat, and then after a recce, that's when you can start tightening up, and when you start getting the constructions underway, that's when you can start doing the risk assessments. Why is risk assessment the most widely used technique instead of more contemporary or more technological techniques? Risk assessment, I mean, it really, the technique risk assessment is because it's basic that you have to identify risk, and as you saw, however, the technological side of it, I'm presuming you're saying about maybe going to visual effects so that the technology can reduce risk by going to visual effects. Possibly that might be what is coming from this question. But yeah, that is a control measure. When you can do a fire, you can localize fire and then use digital to increase that. So it is done. I would say absolutely. Contemporary techniques are definitely used, but risk assessment is just a case of it's there and it's known and it's formatted with all the hazards that are there. Those hazards don't go away, so that's why risk assessment is widely used. What is the most challenging job and risk assessment you've ever been faced with? I had to collapse a pier on a drama. So the producer came and said, we've got some elements that we need to think about, in advance. And he said, we've got basically a wedding is going on a pier and a building on a pier, and there's an accident on a boat, and the boat crashes into the pier and the pier collapses into the sea. So that was by far the most challenging production, where I've really had to, and yes, and the risks and the control measures had to be really thought out, and we did it for real. We actually built a pier in a field and used visual effects to take out I built it on a water tank, and then where the water tank finished, then visual effects took on the sea element. And then we went and found an empty pier, and visually, again, this is where I suppose that other question, contemporary, more technological techniques come in. So we found an empty pier, and we had the boat approach an empty pier, and then visual effects put the building that I designed onto that. And then it was a lot of filming cuts. So when interior cuts and high shots looking down into surging water that was there, it was physical. That was definitely, I would say, the most challenging job and risk assessment, because again, I had actors and stunt people at height, I had crew building at height. So everything had to be really bolt and braced. So that's definitely was very challenging. Right, any other questions? Don't think so. I'm hoping everyone's found this useful. And again, if anyone can get in touch with me if you've got any follow-up questions that you don't want to sometimes say on a chat, and you think about it afterwards. Through the British Film Designers Guild, you can get in touch with me, and I'll happily go through and explain things. If I didn't make something clear, then I'll happily go over that as well. But yeah, I think it's come to that time where it's been a delight to go through this. And please keep an eye on the British Film Designers Guild website for all these kind of things that we happen, the guest speakers and the webinars and all this stuff. It's flourishing, and so we want to keep everyone safe. That's good. Mentoring. So do you find that crew follow safety measures properly? Do I find crew following safety measures properly? I would say no. It would be the truthful answer. However, that they do when there's a severity. If it's minor, then I would say no. But definitely, if the risks are higher, then absolutely yes, I would say. Now, one thing I definitely want to mention is that we've launched with Screen Skills a mentoring program that you can apply to be a mentee, so there are mentors that will then can look to see where you want to go. If it's drafting, it's art direction, it's props, it's set decoration, that we can mentor people. And so please look at the website for that. And I do encourage you to look at becoming a mentee or a mentor. Again, if you're in the art department, you don't have to be a head of department at all. You could have stepped up from being an assistant, and you feel that your knowledge of what you were doing can mentor people who are coming into the industry or stepping up along the way. It's very, very important that we keep this going. Mentoring's always gone on, and it's been a brilliant way that I became a production designer because I was mentored, but not a written formatted mentorship. It was just people taking me under the wing, making sure I've done things right, looking at drawings I've done, and mentoring. So I would do really recommend you have a look at that on the website. So there was a question here: how did the risk assessment process change during COVID in pre-production? So COVID COVID was, well, I mean, one of the risk assessments was obviously filming stopped for a start, and then COVID measures were put in place. Obviously, we had the government guidelines, and then for filming and productions to continue, all these elements were very stringently put in place, because obviously we're a freelance world predominantly, and we wanted to get back up to work, up to speed, so that we can carry on getting paid. So that was making sure we adhered to the processes put in by the government guidelines. Yeah, so, but risk assessments were then identifying a hazard. Then, and that, if you look back onto this talk, you'll see biological, effectively, viruses. So there's the hazard and the risks, and therefore the control measures. So it's in the risk assessment, that element. It's just not there as COVID, it's there as a biological hazard. So I'm just going to wait a few more moments to see if there's any more questions. If anyone thinks of anything, and if not, I will. You can see. Yeah, I will bid everyone farewell and have a lovely evening. Okay. Well, that's it from me. Thanks, lovely. Thank you very much. I hope that you found this informative, and as I say, please feel free to get in touch through the British Film Designers Guild if you need any more information. Brilliant. Right. Thank you very much.